A lot more open countries than I originally planned.
Hi, everybody. I am Robert Pinsky, and I teach in the Boston University Creative Writing Program, where the readers tonight, all different from one another, all excellent, gifted people who worked hard at the art, are in the process of graduating from the BU MFA program. I'll try to say just a little bit about MFAs and about this moment in this generation of poets. I've been reading a lot for various reasons about friendship and poetry. And it's striking how much of the writing about friendship and poetry involves drunkenness. It's really amazing that in Ha Jin, my colleague Ha Jin's biography of Li Bo, who maybe is the greatest poet ever, there's a wonderful passage about Li Bo and two of his friends getting so drunk they forget to go to sleep. They dance, they go to the other guy's house, and Li Bo improvises, as he often did. He improvises. They've been singing and playing music, and it describes the way he dances. He throws his feet up in the air, and a poem about very sad times, though it's also manic. And the Harlem Renaissance poets all write about music and singing, like Li Bo, and they also are writing about, they're very aware of Jim Crow and all of that. And there's this mixture of joy and lament that seems to have to do with the sociable nature of poetry. In his great poem praising his friend and teacher, Ben Jonson, Herrick says, "And yet each verse of thine outdid the meat, outdid the frolic wine when they partied." And Horace's poem to his friend, where he says, "I ran away in battle, I threw down my little sword, my shield." He says, "Now let's get drunk." This is not, last thing I would do as an American is sentimentalize alcoholism. I'm not saying that. Our art, the art of poetry, is sociable. The writing workshop that fiction writers have imitated really came from poetry. When I want to take a Mickey out of my fiction writer friends, I say, yeah, poetry, it's people together singing, telling jokes, playing music, dancing, and it's communal. Fiction, and it goes back thousands of years. Fiction is Industrial Revolution, symmetrical rectangular blocks of print. And it's a property. The fiction writer says, no, I don't show my work until my agent sends it to my publisher. I keep it to myself like in a safe. I'm exaggerating, but you all are living through bad times. You're living through a virus that seems to be adapting faster than we can adapt to it. For the first time in history, American civil rights have been reduced and taken away from people. All of this is an opportunity to become a very memorable, very important generation of poets. And I do find signs of it in the poems that you're going to hear tonight. And part of the art of poetry is that it's a way to be socially conscious while being sociable. It's a way to temper or modify the impulse to preach or kvetch, pardon the rhyme. The impulse to preach or kvetch can be tempered and adapted by the friendship among poets. I don't have any idea in which you all are going to read, but I hope you do. Here they are.
right, maybe glasses first. All right, hello everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Robert, for being here to introduce us, and to James for hosting tonight. It's wonderful to be in this room. These are all out of order, of course. So the first poem I'm going to read is, it's actually based on a Grolier reading. Yes.
Say your name.
Oh, right. Hi, I'm Christie. And I'm Goodwin. Just check. So this poem is actually written based on a Grolier reading. I'll put these back on so I can read. And yeah, that's all. All right, this is called Poet. The word poet leers at me in pink embroidery on the back of a leather vest, worn by a man who nods with his torso and insists that this poetry reading is in fact a group discussion. His wife beside him wears a limp scarf, one that suggests art curator or therapist, and perhaps also poet, and both loudly recount their presence at the genesis of the mag or the movement. Perhaps they met at an anti-war protest, or while shuffling zines to copy shops, when they were young and sincerely Marxist in photos, proximate to fame, madly in love. Exiting the group poetry open discussion, I see them ahead, arms around each other, stare long enough until the cobblestone catches me wondering what they were like at my age, how life has changed the immutable. I wonder if she embroidered that jacket and how decades in-stitched souls. I wonder so much, I almost ask. Okay. This next one is called Sunrise. And it's partially because I have a great aunt, Auntie Joyce, who is a conscientious sea glass collector, meaning that when she finds unfinished sea glass, she throws it back in the ocean so it can be finished for someone else, which I find endearing. But yeah, this is Sunrise. I slipped out this morning, left you asleep with dawn slanting across your face. I walked into a wash of gold while you were in bed, snoring, wrapped in the entire duvet. You hoarded it all night. I strolled along the beach, feet cold on the shell-peppered sandbar. My feet are used to being cold, exposed to the draft in our bedroom when you leave me with no duvet. I went to see the sunrise expand over the stone-cut shore and to get first pick of the sea glass. It is my trophy for getting up early. I walked out to the jetty, badgered with shells and stones, salt water splashed in my mouth. When I yawned, this happened twice. When you wake, I will be in the kitchen. The sun and coffee will be warm, you so sweet in your slippers. But you must look at my sea glass and tell me it is extraordinary. How else will I know it was all worth it? For the record, I'm the one that steals the duvet. So that poem is inspired by me. Over the last couple years, I have been attempting to learn Hungarian, which is extremely difficult, but it's fun. And this poem is kind of based on the experience of trying to learn a new language, and you sound like an idiot all the time. So this is called Residence Permit. Good day, may I occupy a table? I would like a milky coffee. I will pay by card. Do you want palinka? We want 2 shots of good palinka. Is this the good palinka? I got a strange letter, police or government. I must go to Serbia quietly at night. Is this the lawyer's office? He calls me Blondie. Does he know I understand? We meet at 1930 at Urdog Kuchma, yes? It's cold for springtime. I'm sorry, I'll be gone by then. Not here, American University. I know a saying for this. Why give drinks to the mice? Tears would make a salty palinka. Think they drink it from a thimble? Do you have a pocket paper? How to say, I'll come back not soon, but someday? And this last one is called Field Cathedral. I'm coming to the end of my visions. Find myself enfielded where the warm machines of foresight once waited. A touch to their gray hides, all of life lived twice, and they'd sigh, then sink from sight. Out here, and seeing none of the usual silhouettes, I suppress panic. After all, you are beside me and possibly bewildered. As a good showwoman, I start to conjure sky islands, lasso a near one, and ask you aside like, what do you hope I see? Maybe I'll hear them first, forming cathedrals of laughter. Then a vision of our children, wading through the tall grass, come to feel our field, our arms, our eyes. That's all. Thank you.
Hello, hi, I'm Tiara McGuire. I am so excited to be reading at the Grolier after the year I have spent here with my wonderful cohort mates, and James and Bella and the entire Grolier staff. As a little preface, I want to dedicate tonight's reading to my grandparents. I just returned from visiting them over the weekend, and I hope they logged on okay. Hi. But both of whom are not in the best of health right now. And so my mind has really been on them, and a lot of the poems I will be reading today are heavily influenced by family ancestry and my culture, my family's culture. My family's from Macedonia, former Yugoslavia. So many of the poems will be along that vein. And I will also be reading one of the poems I translated of my grandfather, which I think I am actually going to start with that one. So this is by my grandfather, Stefan Dinevsky, originally called Pismo od Eden Pečalbar, which means letter from the migrant worker. And here it is. Lost like the wind in death nights, I'm wandering through crevices in someone else's country, searching for my own existence where I wasn't born. I carry you with me, nation of mine. I walk with all your burdens, your songs, your cry that lays me down drunk from unease in this foreign place. How my song overflows like an echo endowed to me at my departure, for my severance, for one never seen again, and how it shouted, the drum thundered, how it stunned the song frozen inside someone's throat, a mother's son taking leave who will not see her again for far too many years. Here, the sky bears down on me like a nightmare. The waters damn me with their full depth. Naratinitsi have foreseen me led astray to never return to there from where I've come. And next one is on a similar theme called The Witches of Nakolets, which is the village my grandfather is from. In Macedonian folklore, witches are sometimes depicted as moths or butterflies. Bed of moth wings gathered at the lake shore, speckled, sightless eyes peek through an unnatural abundance of hagstones. All these women in the earth. I imagine if they had bodies, they'd look like me. Widened eyes, wider hips, half-parted lips to reveal a third eye stuck in the gap between front teeth, staring at whatever stirs the lake from below on a windless night. Impenetrable and awaiting opportunities for self-sacrifice. What else fills the heart? Then the next one, I'm going to read. Also spent a lot of this year playing around with poems inspired by horror movies, which was very fun, and my cohort was super wonderfully supportive of this weird experiment. So I will read one of those. Failed reanimation. My heart hooked to an electric chair, masquerading as bed, masquerading as shelter. The hole in the ceiling wants to serve me the lightning, put me on my feet to take me into town, hanging on the doctor's arm, loose and alive. I buckle down, keep away from windows while my hair burns white. It's been a year since I died. when I left home seeking you only to meet October's departure on top of an abscess of Pennsylvanian earth. Prometheus's downfall took 7 hours eastward on I-90. The 7 hours back were worse, narrated by Welcome to Night Vale community announcements like PTA meeting caught in space-time rift and the dangers of discount bloodstones and downpour. So much like this morning, where our souls still feel strangely attached. Some ligaments unsevered by abandonment ache when the weather is right. Life and death are such ideal bounds. I think I'm gonna read 2 more. This next one is entitled For the Superstitious. And we're back on the Macedonia theme. Tetapale mends the crossroads to my mother's heart by twirling a dagger above her head. Midnight croons until the point heeds west. Midnight, sorry. My mother is unconvinced. But many unconceivable things would happen to many more people soon. Baba Stefanka breaks chicken necks with kindness, while Baba Boyana inverts belly buttons to birth sons. The men listen to the radio while sharpening scythes. Baba Draga drowned once, except she didn't, not actually. Floated up over the mountain instead. I almost hear her crying to an accompaniment of a drunk ox's hooves pounding into fields. Unintentional maps of wheat read like the livestock's hieroglyphs. This is how you wreak havoc and steep wine in your belly all at once. This is how you bless a house with a dead goat in the foundation. Further back in the bloodline, it's likely women divined with lead, tossed beans and saw a country break, a country after their lifetimes and brain dead at the brink of mine. Watching neighbors die on TV meant there was no need to hire mourners. The blood awakened weeping woman in us all. I spit 3 times every day to keep the war from coming back. And I will be closing with this poem called Voprespa, which is the lake my family hails from. You and Dedo in the morning, tenderly cutting bread, each slice a pact between grain, water, soul. Dedo picked up 5 jars of Ivar at the market last week. You brought him your good feta, the one that transforms years into specks of salt. Salt is soul, the garnish on the holy grail, unimaginable opulence. And you both return to the mountain's lab. Hang peppers to dry in Dedo's stomach. The Capacian in his cells solidifies to bronze. If we are truly barbaric, let us be fierce now inside our own bodies. Baba is late. She arrives on the low tide when the lake contracts its arms and the snakes are left without cover. She is plump as the grape leaves she stuffs, brimming with rice, meat, renewal. Her bones rebuild by supple strength of apricots and figs. In the orchard, she remembers how to stand. Mother, I will raise a village in my heart until the last house empties. I am gorging on the harshest ends of your voice, running my tongue across the tree line of my teeth to cradle every remnant of time. The vineyard draws me a bath. All the lambs sing. We have always been our own liberation. Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Oh. Poems for today. I'm Nathan Miller. Probably guess I'm also part of the program. Poems. It's called Illinois. The radio gurgles downstream. Below is the fleck noise of cooling fuel and steel, like the sound of hot kernels on glass. We've broken down and the bus sleeps in the overgrown grass of the median on I-70. So I stand up, hear the indigo and its dozens of lungs beneath me as I walk to the blade of moon coming through the open door, crane into the rows of seats on either side of me, scan the hot bundles of clothing, the faint lines of loose jaws and eyelids. They look dead, like shipwrecked mariners. Behind me, cell phones bloom like searchlights. I wake the ones I know and we swim to the exit, into the cool wake of passing cars and herds of semis. On the shore of the interstate, a girl from Kansas sits with us in the grass. Anywhere but Kansas, that's where she is going. I smile partially because I think that's cool. We watch a brood of passengers stumble out into the open air, half blind and stretching their damp skin, coming back into their lifetimes. She asks how long I'll be here. I tread in the thought until it wears me out. Row of halogens, a chasm in the dark iris. We split our fruit. It's called Drive By. Outside the C-store, with shoulders and head out the passenger window, he is shot in the face as his friend bottoms the engine and blows the light, burning rubber into the splintered 4 p.m. drawl. People inside the C-store cease to float between the zebra cakes and refrigerated light beams, stop bribing dusty clerks for swishers or spotting someone 99 cents to buy big Arizonas to simmer in work beef parking lots. His shell parades towards a pointless medevac flight, half slumped out the passenger side like a basket spilling hard candy into the sunlit human estuary, sweet with coming soon promise. I wonder what's next as he travels to a distant street. I feel nervous. His Valkyrie chuffs air as I thumb the wrappers in my palm. Randomizing. This one's called Obligations. In his room above the Y, we hug the wall against the piles of crusted plates, burn-hold upholstery, and Suboxone bottles. And we talk about the man who lived next door, dead like the tenants across, and dead like the fish. Cheap little life from the pet store. I look at their shapes in the cloudy still water, floating in their own shit, then back at him. To the incessant smear of human noise, he explains it was too much to handle, and investigates as if for the first time his decimated life for a cup or bowl to collect their tiny bodies, stopping for a moment, smiling, to hold up a photo of us long out of date and taken care of. Called From the Lost Coast. This is way harder than playing music live. Prodded by the sun, we wake from the fern beds and grind the burst char into dew. We collect our packs, tie up our pot, hatchet, sleeping bags, then finish the rum and descend the ridge. The pollen drenches. The light is gummed, syrupy like spilt shellac. To think I had so much opportunity to die before this, and that still someday I will unfasten the things I saw swept away and evaporating on a windshield, a nasal membrane, a pillow by an open window. Our voices rasp through the dust into plumes of gold as we reach the road where men in jumpsuits beat back the wildwood with pole saws, frying through arms of hemlock and cedar, and where a girl sells cherries. She's kind, pretty, about my age, her smile freckled and soft from growing under the California sun. I buy a box and sit in a nap of weeds, spitting the pits over the next ridge. The cherries taste good. They are like nothing I've ever had. This is my last poem, called M80. The first poem I wrote for this program. Soon I'll be sneezing blood into sinks, wading through the cope and muse as I burrow back into the city's throb like a locust peeling hosta buds, abridging my mortal fuse to put some skin in again, prune and bleed the phantoms I've cultured in the rotting brownstones and Victorians that backdrop me like huddled pines. I want to make it hurt. May people suck the sting from their tongue. I want that zeal and dedication of a tealy mold sowing a grapefruit. I want to fill myself fat with devoured attentions up top mahogany tables and upper class Cambridge holes in walls, to be the muffle in the floorboard from people fucking, the lighters hugging thighs in low-lit bar rooms, while all the while in between I wonder the word need, wandering in a memory where an M80 beneath an upturned planner winds to dark, sporing terracotta and kicking rock, pale with smoke. I'm frozen still, my mouth open and filling with flash powder. Christ, will somebody just tell me to duck?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Perry, and I'm going to spare you the intro and just head into the poems. Yoko Ono and William Blake find a microscope in hell. Sharp, fresh stench of generations of cordgrass decaying, galaxies of bacteria breaking things, opulence of rot, devil's breath through the marsh, in muddy channels, blue shock of sky, or on TV screens into tatami-clad shadows, the sky domesticated, or the house gone feral. Lucent clouds lounge, merge in dark corners, a portal out of smallness. Defiance of decadent gold leaves against dour pines. Two egrets, heads high on slinky throats, spike around on legs at impossible angles, like alien royalty. Blake says in hell, corrosives are remedy, dissolving surface to reveal the infinite. All bodies built of elements from ammonites and ancient glaciers, extinct oceans on distant moons, sky and decay, eternity in bejeweled eyes of a fruit fly. Unstable bodies. Nearing frost threshold, my mother's dahlias still plush with petals. 3 nights last July from their driveway, we offered our faces to the oldest darkness, to hunt a comet that won't be visible from this planet again until we're both thousands of years dead. Like seers and myths, comets bridge worlds, disrupt orderly orbits. Ancient remnants of the birth of planets with centers of ice and rubble. In images, a gravel pit backdrop by eternity. Bright blind tail linking time and space. 2,000 years ago, we thought comets omens of famine, disease, war. Now we watch their beauty vanish, or watch but never find. As they approach the sun, their cores shed frozen vapors and shine. The next one is the bathysphere, which is it's one of the first submersibles that went to a depth below what humans had ever reached before in the ocean. Not to be immersed in this world, but always at a remove of 3 inches of quartz, in a miniaturized counterfeit of your own, a hole in the ocean with palm fans for circulation, eyes full of new blue shades, surface of the water also floor of the air. First witness to schools of hatchetfish and thimble jellies living as they have forever unobserved by humans, lights that mimic the sun, but beneath 1,400 feet of water, the sun does not exist. Silky bodies glide under 6 million pounds of pressure, though they'd crumble on land. A beach submerged since the melting of the last ice age, suspended from a steel cord in a small steel ball, doors that must be hammered shut. At this depth, all is black. A tiny crack or error by haulers could crush your body instantly. Above what glows are remote fires of gas and dust, Below what glows are creatures. Eventually, you sink below language. Impossible light retrieved from this darkness, you'll carry in your nerve cells as if taken from a dream. And my last one is albedo. Arctic terns live more daylight than the rest, winging pole to pole, summer to summer. Old stories say the world ends in winter on winter on winter, until finally the air itself flames and boils the ocean, bloating with melt. Not so mythic now. Faces drain under ice. All that lifeless white flings back the summer's heat. The more dissolves, the more heat sinks in, and so on. Fearn silvers away. More and more faces flicker under panes as millennia drip. Yggdrasil, tree of 9 worlds, shelters new life in the myth. Earth is reborn, though not as before. Just a myth, of course, but it's true the dust of supernovas amasses in these glaciers. Little black-tipped wings lap the globe. I'm not saying we'll survive ourselves, only that something will. Thank you.
Good. Magic suit, you like that? Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, tall. Right. Make sure I got everything in order. I am William Turner, Zach Turner to my cohort, publishing under William Turner. Very confusing for my family. So I'm going to start off with a poem called Diagnosis. A lot of my poems center around the theme of memory, and feels like the right place to start. So Diagnosis. The doctor comes out, head bowed, eyes misty, and I notice only now the landscape hanging on the wall. I'd been there before, a small trailhead in Rocky Mountain National Park. The canvas omits so much, forgets to include the rainbow of oil slicks. The asphalt lot where a girl I knew snuck me a kiss while her brother wasn't looking. The doctor puts his hand on my father's shoulder. The hiking trail led up to a series of lakes, and with them is some memory of exhaustion, of falling in love while blisters formed. My father had been crying. He puts on a strong face. The doctor clears his throat. I don't know if my grandmother ever saw a national park, maybe a state park. She lived so poor after her husband died. Think about it. I mean, really think about it. How many places do you actually remember? Can you bring back anything in full? The doctor says short-term memory will go first. Then I remember the trees parting, but what color were they? I'll never get right. The sun might have been shining. I know I was happy. The doctor tries to explain how it will all end. And I keep dreaming of a clear snowmelt lake somewhere in the mountains, of diving in, of forgetting. This next one is in honor of my other grandmother on my mother's side. We would spend the fall picking persimmons, which we used as little omens about where the weather was going to go for the winter. Persimmons. The sun setting, giant blood orange, split pomegranate sky. My hands stained from reading entrails, burnt gold carcasses heaped in silver bowls. Pollen in stamen, in flower, in fruit, months spent cohering, squabbling amongst selves about a satisfactory definition of future tense. Oracular fruit, sliced open, silverware seeds setting winter's table, secrets sung during conception, the whispers of bees, the air's omniscience, what was overheard when Apollo passed by. In this bowl, knives, put your hand over them. Feel the cutting wind, the ice which might be carved. Here a few forks. Taste the brittle grass, sweet blood from chapped lips, a lake which may not coagulate. But this year we are overflowing with spoons. Imagine igloos, snowmen buried up to necks. Road salt cannot protect us. In this way we prepare. Buy the shovels, split the logs, trusting the persimmon's prophecy, more accurate than Delphi on Channel 3. Though we know that truth is only found in past tense, even so, we bake the bread, we make the jam. This next one is about the fact that horses just give birth to other horses. There's no baby horse, just a new horse comes out. It's called Horse Begets Horse. Legs splayed, the mare stands in the field, rigid, lies down, rolls to one side, huffs a bellow, maybe two, and it's over. Birth done. She stands back up, licks her and hers clean, stoops to eat like it was nothing at all. Her baby isn't a baby, just another horse. Give the kid 10 and she'll be full gallop, as if existence was light, as if it was easy. Lightly, my physician joked, congratulating me on finally having a fully formed prefrontal cortex. That is, finally reaching maturity after a quarter of a century. But my legs still feel wobbly underneath me some days. Some days, I still prefer to be held like something new. The mayfly on the willow feels it all in 24 hours. It's been a year since the foal was born, and she gave birth today. Horse begets horse, and nothing slows down. I wept today because 40 seems too young to die. M's baby girl was born too soon. Doctor says she's gonna make it as we look at the tube running out of her nose. The next horse is galloping around its mother, so old already. And I'm going to end with a poem called Farm Talk. I am from the South and I must bear honor to my roots. So Farm Talk. The sickle keeps on swinging, swooping, a quick flash, then falling, and chaff rising through the breeze. We sit, ignore the metaphor of farm work, care, and the patience for harvest. There's a story about that, I'm sure. Now, though, we just sit on the hill, bored. You say something about the weather or time or whatever, and the universe advances, too much too quickly. And the lake by the field reflects all of this back to us, too much too quickly, whatever, and the universe advances. You say something about the weather or time or now, though we just sit on the hill, bored. There's a story about that, I'm sure. Farm work, care, and the patience for harvest. We sit, ignore the metaphor of chaff rising through the breeze, swooping, a quick flash, then falling, and the sickle keeps on swinging.
Hi, my name is Gabriela. I'm another poet in the program. I thought I would start with a poem that's been maybe one of the most meaningful poems that I've written to me this year. Let's see. It's called Restraint, and it's about learning how to shoot a rifle, which is not my everyday. Restraint. Your old motorcycle glinted like a fleck of mica in the sun
from where I towed a discarded shell in dry dirt. You said we could carve a hole in it, string it like a jewel around my neck, if I wanted. But I wanted instead to shoot. So you brought me the smallest rifle of your dad's dozen from inside, where Rainer and Zola jingled behind you curious. And 2 aluminum cans we set on flower pots at the foot of the shallow ditch. I watched you feed 22 cartridges into the magazine, explaining open action, safety on, aimed away, before you reversed the orders and shot the first can dead on. I lifted my dress, set a knee to gravel, scoped over the garden cart, the metal heart, and shot. Ping, thrill, that was that. Back inside, Rainer pursued, sniffing the empty barrel as you moved to lock it up. I remembered you'd once said, watching him lick my face, how you'd realized just how big he was, his teeth and broad neck, capable of shaking animals to death. We put the planters back in the shed. We let the dogs back out into the yard. You pointed out flocks of geese, snow geese, and sandhill cranes migrating over the alfalfa field. More than beautiful, said, no one can hunt them, at least not here. Pointed out their shadows like smoke descending onto the trees. Okay. The second one is called Parting with Words. And I thought I would read it because it was inspired by a walk I took in Cambridge, actually. It's after Jory Graham, and it's kind of about this poem that I've not been able to find, but I know it's about, okay, so Jory Graham speaks 3 languages. And it's sort of this meditation on this tree outside of her window. And because she speaks 3 languages, she sort of sees the tree in 3 different lights. So it's a little bit about the sort of stating of perception through language, I guess. Parting with words. Enamel bites ivory toothless, but only if you sound it. When Graham describes a tree, she describes 3 trees. 1 French, 1 English, 1 Italian. When I describe a tree, I don't. Bright Cambridge is silent movement. Chopin from the record shop's open door out into empty cobbled Eliot. Sun filters through his etude as if his etude were a bough of leaves. I'll surrender a good word to know it's not the word that matters, or syntactic betrayal. Even Pound's word of many words, careful equation. Trees near ancient, bend brick lattices. Plaid skirt warped in walk away from Chopin's exercise, which filters now through the sun as if the sun were a bough of leaves. Let's see. So I kind of want to jump to this one. So kind of in lieu of what Robert was saying and some themes that have kind of arisen throughout this reading. In the spring semester, I was really lucky to be able to translate some personal letters by an Argentine poet named Alejandra Pizarnik. And in one of these letters, she talks about how she's just been fascinated with this idea that comedy and death are like the same thing. And kind of also adds sex and also adds beauty in there, that they're all kind of like this bursting forth of the unknown. But I was like really dogged, I guess, by this idea of like comedy and death is the same thing for the past couple of months. And yeah, I mean, some people in the room know that things with my family have been very difficult for the past couple of weeks. And so this poem just sort of came to me in one go, just this past Tuesday. So it's very new. It may seem disrespectful but. So it's, it's about my grandmother, and my grandmother would think it's hilarious. So just keep that in mind. It's called The Mudheads. I read a poem at my grandmother's funeral. We lowered her into the ground, threw whole roses on her, and the living of her dozen children took turns shoveling dirt in one by one. It was the first time I cried, not out of sadness, but beauty. Afterwards, my mother pushed me into the center of the ring of family, and I read the poem. When it was over, my uncle came up to me. He said the poem was beautiful, but that he couldn't hear any of it. My adolescent voice carried on the wind, and could I send him a copy? 10 years later, I make a trip out to the Badlands with Josh. We sit on the eating part of a picnic table and flip through an encyclopedia of Native American myths and stories. We bought it at Wall Drug, a tourist trap, because my family had just started to accept, in the company of others, our grandmother's mother came from Wisconsin before it was Wisconsin. Of all the stories, what sticks with us is the story of the Mudheads, spiritual clowns provoking laughter at weddings, even funerals. In the story, an old woman tries to teach the Mudheads to copulate. One sticks his penis in her ear, another her elbow, another her ass, but the woman only laughs and laughs. Before she died, I held my grandmother's hand in her hospital bed. She called my mother by her sister's name and called me the girl, stroking my hand like a cat and telling me how soft. Mind wandering and surrounded by a watchful crowd, she started to tell her favorite jokes. All the dirty ones. Ones about an old woman and a dumb traveler. Ones about a donkey and a priest. She held my hand tighter. No one could take me from the room. Everyone looked on, uneasy at first, then relieved when my grandmother laughed and laughed. And I think for the last one, I'll just do this one, which is called Goodnight, which seems fitting. I actually wrote it after I watched Barton Fink and was very interested in, well, I guess because I am just so interested in like very complicated poetry, like for no reason. And, you know, I wonder about, you know, the significance of like very simple, sweet things to people. Like there's an urge and a hunger for poetry. And so formulaic art has, you know, plays some role and is important. And so I was thinking about that, just sort of gratefulness to what's very simple. So it's called Goodnight. Oh, I guess I should also say, I live across the street from a church and they have these really bright floodlights, I guess, that turn on at night. And so there's people sometimes like walk in front of them to like cast big shadows on the church. Good night. Two walk the churchyard near midnight. From my second story window across the street, I watch them slog through its spotlight and make shadows with gloved hands onto its crystal white roof. The dog chases the rabbit, snowfall like dust on old film. This is good, I felt. No more insight. People want to feel good. Art is difficult. People want to keep their heroes and their villains separate. From now on, only mariachi ballads, wrestling movies, trivia with answers reversed underneath, perfect projections. When I write snowfall through lamplight, I will not try lampfall through snowlight. only snow, dog, light, rabbit, night, good. Thanks.
Thank you for coming, everybody. Let's give the poets another round of applause. Chairs up against the wall, I'd be grateful. Thanks for coming. We have another reading tomorrow with your Hamilton. It's all fun.
Which one I liked it the first time I had it as well, but I really enjoyed hearing it again. That one's